How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 2.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. I'm glad to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. I gotta talk about a difficult subject, and I don't really want to talk about it because it's like, ooh, yay, let's start Monday talking about something this depressing. But I will. However, I wanna pull back the curtain a little bit because I'm exchanging notes with my boss on how I've got to do the audiobook recording in a couple of weeks, and everybody asks me, why do you have to go to a special place to record your audiobook? You're on radio. You're in a soundproof studio. Why can't you record it? Y'all, having recorded the audiobook of my last book, I got to tell you, it's actually an impressively technical process. When you record the audiobook, you're in a very soundproof room. It is more soundproof than any radio studio I've been in. Not only is it like exceedingly soundproof, you're not allowed to have anything in front of you. You can't have a glass of water. You can't have paper. You can't have the book. You're in a room with nothing but a chair and a microphone. And on the other side of the glass is a teleprompter and a person who sits in that room. And that person reads the book as you are reading the book, keeping pace with you. And if you mispronounce a word, they make you go back and say the word over again so that you get the pronunciation right. Or if you get to a word where you pronounce it one way, but they pronounce it another way, they make you read the word twice, one with your pronunciation, one with their pronunciation, and they deal with it in post-editing as to which pronunciation is going to go. Just because it's your book doesn't mean you get your way. And the whole reason you have a teleprompter on the other side of some glass that is at an angle so it doesn't reflect your voice back into the microphone is because if you're touching a trackpad trying to scroll on the pages, the microphone is sensitive enough to be able to pick it up. Or you have paper, they can hear the microphone can pick up the rustling of the paper and the shifting of the paper. So there's a glass window. On the other side is a teleprompter, and in that room is also a person who has to listen to you live as you're reading the book, so that they can challenge you on words or ask you to read a sentence again, or if you stumble and don't realize it, they catch it, and it is a very technical process. I was amazed the very first time I did it. It did not take me long to read, but it still took like 3 days to do the first book. And this one, they've reserved 3 days and a makeup day on a fourth day. And I've got to do it around radio too. So I'll go in the morning and begin, then do radio, then go back to the studio and finish up in the afternoon. It's going to be a lot of talking over a lot of days in July. Fun times coming. But anyway, that was mostly me trying to distract myself from talking about what I don't want to talk about that I must talk about. CBS News had an amazing report at the end of last week, and I actually missed it. Philip called it to my attention, and I had to go back and check it out. I thought I had seen it, but it was something I had not actually seen. Video has surfaced from August of 2001, a month before 9/11, a Saudi official went around Washington, D.C., recording buildings, the Capitol, the White House, the Treasury Department. And in doing so, was explaining that this building is in relation to that building. And if you're looking down on the buildings, here's what it looks like, and here's where each one is so that you would know. Essentially, it sounds like, if you listen to the audio, he's saying if you're in an airplane and you're looking, here's where these buildings are. This one's the Capitol. This one's the White House. This one's the Pentagon. Here they are in relation to each other. The former deputy director, Morrell, of the Central Intelligence Agency, was on the 9/11 Commission. He says he is confident they did not have that information. They did not see the video. They did not know of its existence. It's newly revealed video. And it's another reminder that there are lots of people in the upper echelons of society in Saudi Arabia that are not our friends. And it's a warning sign for us moving forward that there's a lot of stuff in the world right now that is signaling there's a problem. The left wants you to pay attention to the climate change warning signs. There's a heat wave going on. It actually rained this morning here in Middle Georgia. We haven't had rain in weeks. But there's a La Nina in the Pacific, and that tends to make high pressure or heat wave domes along the eastern coast of the United States. There are records being set. There's a big heat map. Washington, D.C. is hitting 100 degrees for the first time in 8 years. Now, perspective, we've been told that every year is the hottest year, and yet this is the first time in 8 years Washington, D.C. has hit 100 degrees. So when you freak out about Washington, D.C. hitting 100 degrees, remember the last time it did was 8 years ago. And if you listen to the left's kabuki theater on this, it should have been hitting 100 degrees every year since then, but it hasn't. But all of these little things that happen, fires, big storms, warning signs, climate change, and they want you to pay attention to all of those things. Why are none of these people obsessed with warning signs about climate, paying attention to the warning signs about a terror attack in the United States? Here's the former deputy director of the CIA.
You just had that Foreign Affairs article that got all this attention. The terrorism warning lights are blinking red again. You compared the moment we are in now to what happened in the lead up to 9/11. And I want to play something FBI Director Chris Wray said earlier this month.
Our most immediate concern has been that individuals or small groups will draw twisted inspiration from the events in the Middle East to carry out attacks here at home. But now, on top of that, increasingly concerning is the potential for a coordinated attack here in the homeland, not unlike the ISIS-K attack we saw at the Russia concert hall back in March.
That's chilling. The White House says the president is briefed regularly on threats. If that is true, do you think he's doing enough?
Hard for me to say whether he's doing enough because a lot of what needs to be done we wouldn't see publicly. What I would say is I ran into a lot of current intelligence officers and current policymakers after we published the article. The response was almost universal in, we're glad you wrote this, it's really important. I read that as maybe there's a lack of a sense of urgency here, and that's really important.
A lack of sense of urgency among members of the public or the government?
The administration, yeah. And Congress, quite frankly. There needs to be a sense of urgency about this. And I think the American public needs to understand what the threat is. That's why we called for a public congressional hearing just on the terrorist threats to the homeland, right? Not a hearing on threats broadly, but threats to the homeland. And then we need to hear what the administration is doing about this in a broad sense, right? Not the details, but in a broad sense.
In a broad sense, we need to hear about the details. Representative Mike Turner talking on Fox News about this.
What do you think of Joe Biden's comments saying that he claims that choice doesn't have to be made between securing our border and amnesty for illegals?
Well, all you have to do here is look at who his audience is. It certainly isn't the voter. Voters, 60 to 80% are against an open border. In this, his message are to those individuals that he wants to incentivize to come here illegally. And that's, as you were saying, where we end up with this national security risk because the administration has let in individuals who have ties to ISIS and Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups and organizations. That's why you hear Director Wray saying that we're at the highest level of threat for a terrorist attack. And it's all a result of Biden's policies.
That is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. I am really concerned about this issue. No one wants to be Chicken Little, screaming that the sky is falling. But there are all sorts of warning signs. 2 men, illegal aliens, tried to break into Quantico. 8 men from Tajikistan, all illegal aliens, were picked up on chatter over bomb making. They all had ties to ISIS. The director of the Central Intelligence Agency and the director of the FBI are warning that our unsecured southern border is a national security issue. We have found people from China, from Pakistan, from India, from Tajikistan, from Uzbekistan, from Syria, from Lebanon, from Algeria, from Mauritania, across the Middle East and China. Young men, military age, coming into the United States. Ken Cuccinelli and Ron DeSantis, both in separate conversations at last year's gathering, pointed out you would be surprised at the number of Chinese nationals who fly to the Bahamas, buy boats, and speed them up onto the beach in Florida, jump out and run away before authorities can stop them. And it's Chinese military-age men. My gut tells me that those Chinese military-age men are not military personnel from China, more or less, but men fleeing a communist regime. But my gut also tells me you only need a handful of them to be on the bad side to do something. Y'all, we've got CIA officials and FBI officials, people in the private sector, former officials, people in the military, all warning us that our southern border is a national security threat, and Joe Biden continues to leave it open. Joe Biden continues to allow them to flood, and he did an executive order that was all theater. He did he has allowed, knowing that it was going to be challenged, allowed it to move slowly so his order can't even go into effect. It's all theater from Biden to try to get through the election. He wants people who are concerned about open borders to think he's doing something when really he's doing nothing except catering to the left. And meanwhile, the national security threats are growing. And you know and I know, let's be really honest about this, you know and I know, if Donald Trump does get reelected and something bad happens the day after he gets elected, the media and the Democrats will all blame Donald Trump, who will have been on the job for 24 hours. It's all partisanship. Attacks on this nation should not be partisan. After 9/11, Democrats and Republicans together were pretty united for a while. Not now. If Donald Trump's president, there's no way the Democrats will be united. They will seek to exploit a tragedy to take back office. The reality is our national security, our intelligence, and our military communities are telling us the southern border is a national security threat, and there is a growing body of intelligence suggesting a terror attack is building inside this country, and our president of the United States is doing absolutely nothing that we know of about it, including his refusal to secure the very border that national security, intelligence, and military all tell us is a significant vulnerability, and from which we know in real-world data multiple people with ties to terrorist groups have come across our border, and yet this administration does nothing. Greetings, welcome. Eric Erickson here. The phone number 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. Tom Jones is a former political operative and staffer from Congress who is setting up the American Accountability Foundation with a grant from the Heritage Foundation. The left is freaked out by it. You know what he's doing? In his small town in Kentucky, he's going through a database of federal employees trying to figure out which of them might try to obstruct a Trump agenda. And the Associated Press is trying to make this a horror story. It is, in their words, a highly unusual and potentially chilling effort. That's right. He wants to go through and find what employees within the federal bureaucracy might try to obstruct a Trump agenda. Y'all, this isn't a bad thing. This isn't a bad thing. He calls it Project Sovereignty 2025. And what we have found in the first Trump administration, what we found during the Bush administration, what we found during the first Bush administration, what we found during the Reagan administration is a repeated pattern of entrenched bureaucrats trying to oppose a conservative agenda and a Republican president's agenda. The bureaucrats deciding they weren't there to do the will of the executive who the people elected, but to obstruct him. Rooting these people out is a good thing, and kudos to Kevin Roberts and the Heritage Foundation for recognizing it and pushing it. You can call it a Red Scare, you can call it McCarthyism, but the reality is, you know, and I know, that there are plenty of progressive bureaucrats who will do everything they can to stop the Trump administration's agenda from succeeding. We saw it during his first term as they slow-walked and obstructed stuff. The Republicans playing a long game on this one. They should. There's nothing spooky or scary about Project 2025, which will build a database of people to go into the administration, and there's nothing spooky about the Sovereignty 2025 project to purge progressives from the bureaucracy so they can't block Donald Trump's reforms. Good for Heritage for doing this. Now, Hillsdale College wants to find out your ideas on the left's trying to block the Electoral College. The left, through blue states, are trying to enter into some form of interstate compact where if a majority of states agree, or I don't even think it's a majority, like a majority of blue states agree, that each state will bind its Electoral College votes to the national popular vote. The left has concluded that no Republican will ever win office again with a majority popular vote. I think that's short-sighted thinking, but they've convinced themselves of it. So they're trying to get their Electoral College bound to the national popular vote to make it less likely that a Republican could get through with the Electoral College. And Hillsdale College wants to know what you think about it. EricForHillsdale.com, ERICK, EricForHillsdale.com. You can go take the presidential selection survey. Tell Hillsdale what you think about the methods we use in this country to pick the president and the alternative methods as well. Eric, ERICK, EricForHillsdale.com. Go take the survey today. Tell Hillsdale College what you think. Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program. I am going to do something that there are alarm bells going off in my head telling me I should not do this not because of the majority of you, but because of a minority of you. But I'm not going to let the hecklers get the veto of how I do my show. All I'm going to do at the beginning here is just tell Philip, who should be listening, you are not allowed to excerpt in any way, shape, or form this video and put it on Instagram so that the trolls can feed off of it, because I know what's going to happen. A reasonable excerpt will be taken. It will be put up on Instagram, and, well, the trolls will have at it for what I'm about to do. So it's all or nothing. We may park this whole thing on YouTube, but we're not going to excerpt it. I want to do just strict analysis for you on the state of the election. This is my opinion, yes. but it is based on talking to a lot of people, Democrat and Republican, the concerns on both sides. So we are now on the Monday before the first presidential debate. We're headed into real general election season. A month from this week, Donald Trump will have the Republican endorsement officially. He'll be the nominee. A few weeks later, Joe Biden will be officially the Democrats' nominee. And there are things happening. Polling is narrowing after Donald Trump's conviction. Donald Trump has erased Joe Biden's cash advantage. The media is whispering there are problems for the Republicans. The Republicans are whispering there are problems for the Democrats. The Democrats are whispering, oh my gosh, really? We're going with Joe? So what's the lay of the land here for everybody? If I were a Republican right now, I would be concerned about a couple of things. If I were a Republican, I would be concerned about the number of Republicans who just seem to refuse to consolidate behind Donald Trump. And in fact, his conviction in New York has played a role in that. As partisan as that conviction strikes so many of us, some people think that it was probably reasonable, trust the jury, and yep, he's a convicted felon. Do we really want a convicted felon as president of the United States? Now, here's why this matters. It's going to be a very tight election, most people presume, and I think most people are right. In a very tight election, every vote does matter, and turnout matters, and having 10% of the Republican Party say, I can't vote for a convicted felon, in a close election, that could matter. The other thing that if I were Republican, I would stay up at night, have nightmares about, is the turnout game for the GOP. The turnout game for the Republican Party does not look promising. They have outsourced the turnout the vote operation in swing states to several groups, one of which is the Turning Point USA kids, which is like putting a bank robber in charge of security for the weekend at a bank. I mean, these are grifting operations that are going to bleed the GOP dry, and they're saying things like, well, we're going to turn out Republicans. We're going to ignore independent swing voters. We're going to focus on maximizing Republican Party turnout. That is insanity. The Republican ground game could be done pretty effectively, and there's time to build a Republican ground game. Philip, you can excerpt this part, I think. If I were a Republican designing the ground game, here's what I would do. Rely in states that have functioning, competent Republican parties on those competent, functioning Republican parties, and then build in the swing states. We know where the swing states are going to be, and the ones that Trump wants to win: Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Everyone largely agrees if Trump wins Pennsylvania, he wins. You're going to want to concentrate your ground game there. You're not just going to want to identify Republicans and get them out to vote. You're going to want to identify Jewish voters who might be open to Trump, of which there are a good number in Georgia and Pennsylvania, in suburban and exurban areas where they're tending to look more and more like rural people. Ignore urban cores. Go to the far reaches of the suburbs out into the exurban territory where it starts to become pasture land. You find Jewish voters and young black men in those areas, and you get them to go vote for Donald Trump. You put together very quickly in every state, in every county, there are Republican operatives who know ground game operations. For the Republicans and the Democrats, you get them on your payroll quickly. And you start the door-to-door process. Buddy of mine, Drew Ryan, manufactures a program called Campaign Sidekick. It's actually very impressive. Has a database of all the voters in every state, and you can do a walk list. And you can do real-time check-in. You know, in 2022, it turns out that some campaigns and GOP operatives who were using other programs were saying that they were knocking on people's doors and they were actually sitting at bars. Turns out one of the reasons the GOP didn't do so well in some of the swing states in 2022 is that the ground game operatives who were so impressive and so overwhelming, turns out their GPS locations reveal them to be at bars saying that they were knocking on doors, and they were not. Put people on payroll, pay them, and track them to make sure they're knocking on doors. It's all possible with software. And you know there are issues too. If you're a Republican, you need Donald Trump to have the very best ground game possible. And if you're a Republican who wants Donald Trump to win, you should be volunteering to go knock on doors. Knocking on doors matters more than any ad to get people out to vote. Remind people to vote, get their absentee ballot, knock on doors again, follow up with them, repeat the process, and they will turn out for you. Republicans, you got a long way to go in your ground game this year. It's sclerotic. It hasn't worked well. You know, in a state like Georgia or Virginia, Glenn Youngkin and Brian Kemp have very good ground games. In fact, Glenn Youngkin borrowed from Brian Kemp's ground game. In Georgia, a swing state, Kemp has a very good ground game. Pity Donald Trump decided to burn bridges with him. Maybe they can be mended. In Arizona, you as a party, you need the Trump campaign to handle outside outreach because Turning Point USA has shown no capacity to do it effectively. And the party in Arizona is a real poop show. If you're a Donald Trump person, you want the Donald Trump campaign to handle the outreach and the targeting of voters in Arizona. In Nevada, same thing. You want the Trump campaign to do it, but you also have a governor, a Republican governor who won the state. I bet you can borrow from him. Wisconsin, the GOP has a pretty good operation. They just need to turn people out. Michigan, same thing. You need to turn people out. You got a pretty good operation, although it went kablooey in 2022. The crazies came in and tried to take over the party. The sane people forced out the crazies. You got an opportunity to rebuild your ground game there. Pennsylvania, all hands on deck. You got Dave McCormick running. He's going to be at the gathering, by the way. Dave McCormick is the Republican nominee for the Senate. He's got deep pockets. He can help fund a good ground game operation. You've got Republicans are hungry for a win in Pennsylvania. Trump is hungry for a win in Pennsylvania. He needs to not outsource it. He needs to actually do it himself. His campaign fund the ground game with people loyal to him. Remember, when Barack Obama ran for president in 2008, one of the unique things Barack Obama did is he brought in-house all the consultants. Republicans and Democrats for years had hired consultants from their consulting firms to come in and work for them on commission. And Barack Obama said, no, sirree, you're going to work for me. You're going to work exclusively for me. I'm going to put you on salary and give you benefits, and you will be mine. You will not work for other candidates. You will be solely focused on my election. And it worked. Meanwhile, John McCain, outsourced to a bunch of strategists and consultants who you will no doubt find humorous, are now anti-Republicans running people to try to stop Donald Trump. If I'm a Republican, my ground game is what's keeping me up at night. And that 10% of Republicans who just can't bring themselves to vote for Donald Trump. And there's a slow shift in the polls that's starting to suggest the conviction is affecting some people. If I'm a Democrat, tell you what keeps me up at night, Joe Biden. Joe Biden is an 80-plus-year-old man who is at war with the English language and can't find his way off stage. And he's decided to go overboard placating the left. I don't know if you know this, Joe Biden's got a new deputy spokesman at the White House. The guy, remember the dude at the Department of Energy who dressed up like a dog for sexual activities and dressed in dresses and stole women's luggage? That dude was insane, and this guy is no better and has tweeted defund the police and get rid of ICE and elimination of the border, pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas, anti-Israel stuff. And he's now a communication spokesperson for Joe Biden who says, pay no attention to all the stuff I was putting on Twitter 5 minutes ago. If I were a Democrat, I would be concerned, just as Republicans are, about that 10% or so of voters who think they just can't vote for Donald Trump, with that 10% of voters on the left who cannot vote for progressives anymore because they're so anti-Semitic and so hostile. Young black men, I would be freaked out about young black men if I were on the left, and clearly they are. That's why they keep sending Kamala Harris out there to try to woo young black men. If I were a Democrat, I would be concerned that Joe's not getting any younger, and every day that goes by in a high-stress situation of the world, he's going to have another elder moment, and it's going to be all sorts of problems. If I were a Democrat, I would be concerned that Donald Trump is now outraising Joe Biden financially. If I were a Democrat, I would be concerned about the size of the turnout. If Donald Trump can mobilize people who very often don't show up and yet are energized because they're angry about the state of the economy, if I were a Democrat, I would be nervous about them. The fact of the matter is this. Democrats are on defense with Joe Biden, and there are more things to be concerned about if you're a Democrat. If you're a Republican, Trump's going to be Trump. That's baked into the equation. The conviction is somewhat baked into the equation now, where a month later, he's still slightly ahead in the polling. The CBS News poll has him up 1. Everything's within the margin of error, which is why you got to be concerned about the people who might not show up because it's Donald Trump. And you got to be concerned about the ground game because you've got to maximize every possible vote. And there's no sign right now that the Republican ground game has what it takes to turn those people out to vote. And Joe Biden has a war machine. Your ground game and your support levels. But if you're a Democrat, you got to worry about the economy turning south. You got to worry about international affairs. You got to worry about a terrorist attack. You got to worry about Joe Biden's senior moments. You've got to worry about Joe Biden's ties to the progressives. You got to worry about Joe Biden with young black men. You got to worry about Joe Biden with Jewish voters. You've got a lot to worry about if you're a Democrat right now in the United States. And you can say, no, there's no way that Donald Trump will ever win. And this is the problem. I am starting to hear Democrats say repeatedly, Donald Trump will not win the presidency. And that's what they said in 2016. And the only way they've been able to rationalize the two is to say Russia stole the election. And honest people know that's not true. And the Democrats are forced to lie to themselves to say Donald Trump will not be president, except the title is former president because he did get elected president when they insisted he never could. Now, I want to tell you about Vision Computers. Vision Computers wants to build a computer for you. You could go, if you need a PC, you can go to the big box store. You can get the one size fits all. Or you could call Vision at 404 Compute and let them design a computer that meets your needs, your wants, and you're not going to have to be constantly upgrading. It's just going to work. And when it does, you get to a point in a few years where, okay, I need to upgrade. You can upgrade. You don't have to start all over again. But also, you get their award-winning tech support. 15 seconds or less, you get the answer to what's going on with your computer, how to do something on your computer. It's for free if you buy the computer from them. But let's say you're a small business. You don't have a big budget for IT. You don't have computers from Vision Computers, but you need help. Vision can fill that as well. Call them at 404 Compute for $179 a year, not a month, a year per computer. Vision Computers can be your IT solution. So your employees can call Vision at 404 Compute and say, hey, I lost a file on my computer. Can you help me find it? I've given up. Sure enough, they can help you. Many cases, they can remote in, they can do email support, they can do printer support, but your company doesn't have to fill the in-house $100,000 a year IT employee salary. You can let Vision be that tech support solution for your employees. In 15 seconds or less, they get the answer to their questions so they can go back to being great employees, great at their jobs, and not have to be proficient at their computer. $179 a year. Or they can build the computers for you, and it comes for free. The tech support does. 404 Compute. Call Vision Computers. Tell them I sent you get an even better deal. 404 Compute or visioncomputers.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. Now, Donald Trump, he's got a winning issue if he wants to take advantage of it, and it's one to capitalize on, frankly. It needs to be done. This is him on the campaign trail. Well, hang on. Right clip. There we go.
Of Rachel, Michael Morin, Aaron Morin Lehman. Would you stand up, please, wherever you may be? They've gone through hell. I've watched them on television. I've watched you on television, and it is a tough deal. People say time. I don't know about time. I don't know if that's the answer. Thank you very much. Michael and Aaron, we grieve Rachel's loss. We pray that God will ease your pain, and we resolve to secure our border so this will never happen again. But you know it's going to happen again because we have a incompetent man. He's an incompetent, and he's happens to be the president. You know, all he has to do is say close the border. He doesn't need Congress. I need Congress. I didn't have Congress.
He's right. My friend Scott Jennings was on CNN this weekend, and he actually texted me and said, your piece that you wrote in your radio monologue from Friday was the inspiration for this, and the reporter on CNN was furious with him. You could tell it in their facial expressions, but listen to this.
2/3 of the American people support Donald Trump's policy prescriptions for immigration right now, including a majority of Hispanics in the United States.
Comments?
Let me just
I mean,
tell
do
you
you see them as racist and xenophobic comments? I mean, he's painting migrants as, being violent, that they have violent tendencies, right? And of course, dehumanizing them to being entertainment for the rest of us.
Is he painting them as being violent? I mean, would Lake and Riley think they were violent? Would Rachel Marin think they were violent? Would Jocelyn Nungare in Texas think they were violent? How about the girl that was raped in broad daylight in New York City? How about the girl that was kidnapped in Missouri? Yeah.
Yes. Good for Scott. Good for Scott.